Hey everybody, I'm going to talk a little bit today about my project called A Different Perspective. Hi, I'm Mark Harmon. I'm a STEM instructor at Ashland Middle School in Ashland, Kentucky. And if at any point during this presentation you have any questions, feel free to jot those down and shoot them to me in an email after the presentation. My email can be found right there at the bottom. I'd be more than happy to provide any assistance that I could. So, identifying the problem. The problem that I saw was that traditional instructional methods lack personal relevance and can hinder engagement. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that traditional instruction does not have a place. It does. You're still going to need to teach, to direct instruct students. I'm just saying that technology is something that these students have at their fingertips constantly. The only time they don't is when they're at school. So as educators, it's our job to then figure out new ways that we can incorporate this technology to aid the educational experience, and make it more engaging, make them more connected to our content. So there was a quote by an educational researcher named Heather Staker that I thought was especially relevant to this kind of topic. It said that most teachers struggle with low student engagement, particularly at the middle school and high school levels. She didn't say that some teachers. She didn't say that a few teachers. She said most teachers. And as middle school and high school instructors, students have often developed this preconceived notion of failure or of disinterest or of disengagement by the time they get to us. So it is our job then to then try to reignite that passion for learning, that desire to know more. And if we're not using all of the tools available to us, then we're almost doing students a disservice. And I'm talking to myself as much as anybody else. So lack of engagement is not a good kid or a bad kid problem. It's a problem. I mean, even as an adult, if something doesn't engage or catch my interest, it's really hard to focus, really hard to pay attention. It has nothing to do about the personality of the kid. It's just a problem that we need to address. Traditional educational experiences, they were designed for a different time and a different student population. Even I'm 30 years old, and even when I was in school 12, 15 years ago, it was a different world. Like technologies that every kid has now weren't available. iPhones came out my senior year. Now just about every kid has either an iPhone or some form of smartphone at their fingertips. It's essentially a supercomputer. It has more computing power than the computer system that sent astronauts to the moon. So it's our job as educators to utilize that new technology, those new supplements that can improve the educational experience. And obviously, student performance has been shown to directly correlate with student engagement. If you're not engaged, if you're not bought in, it's really hard to take the time needed and the mental effort to truly learn and understand the concept. That desire, that why, that want to has to be there. And students are constantly engaged with technology, except when they're at school. I don't know about your school, but at my school, if a kid has a phone in their hand, if they have, they're reprimanded. Now, yes, it can be abused, but to truly get our students' attention, we need to find some way to incorporate these technologies that they're already so used to being exposed to. So my guiding question was, will the implementation of new instructional technologies increase student engagement in the classroom? So I focused on virtual reality. So students will work with teachers to create virtual reality experiences. And then these virtual reality experiences will increase engagement and really make that learning relevant for students, show them the content in ways that they otherwise wouldn't be able to see it. So students collaborated with teachers to identify content conducive to virtual reality experiences. They then found videos or apps relevant to that content and led learning experiences in the classroom. So those students, once they developed it, went into the rooms. They became the content experts themselves, and with collaboration with the teachers, they had facilitated that learning. And then the cool thing that came of it is they actually began collaborating with virtual reality experts. We took a trip to Hazard and explored their virtual reality lab. They showed us what they do, the custom content that they're coming up with, because in the future, our students would like to create their own content. See, and I called this project A Different Perspective, but my students came up with a much cleverer name. It's called Go on a Quest, and they would invite teachers to go on a quest or invite students to go on a quest. And they came up with that name because we had three Oculus Goes and an Oculus Quest that served as our primary virtual reality experiences, which I thought was especially clever. So my learning outcomes, I wanted students to display increased levels of engagement with the classroom content. I wanted them to demonstrate an in-depth understanding of the content through the creation of virtual learning experiences. If you're going to teach others, you've got to understand it yourself. And then students demonstrate an increased understanding of the key content principles. So I wanted all the students to kind of grasp what was trying to be taught there. So to evaluate this, we decided that assessments would be administered pre and post, and then observations were conducted to monitor the student engagement and their comprehension. With that, we asked teachers to kind of provide some input as well. So participating students content understanding and topic interests were assessed, like I said, before and after. The facilitating students' content understanding and topic interests were assessed before and after the experience. So a lot of these students that created the experiences had already gone through, had already completed the courses, had already mastered the content that they were teaching the other students. And then I wanted to see if creating the virtual reality experiences made that learning even more meaningful, more personally relevant, helped them comprehend it better than they learned it the first time. Participating teachers also monitored student engagement pre and post the virtual experience to identify any changes. They wanted to see if the virtual reality experiences were causing the students to be more engaged with the content than they were previously. The results: student engagement with and interest in the content, it increased exponentially in both participating and facilitating student populations. There was increased engagement indicated by all the teachers that implemented the virtual reality experiences, and then students indicated they understood the content better, but there was no direct correlation with higher scores. The content that they ended up creating was more engaging. Students would solicit, like they would ask us to do more of these. They would understand the content better. It made more sense, but we just didn't collect enough data, I don't believe, to prove that this directly correlated to a higher performance on assessments. In the future, we'll have to go back and explore that aspect of it. Some of the example experiences that we did, they created and explored new opportunities for their peers. One was virtual field trips. Students would be able to go beyond their classrooms and tour medieval manors, castles, the great wonders of Egypt. We had kids. There was an app that they were able to go into King Tut's tomb and explore King Tut's tomb. They went into pyramids. They were just, learning about Egypt at that time. The Great Sphinx. There was another group that was learning about medieval Europe. So they were able to go into castles and see feudal lords and see things rather than just a picture in a book. It's like they were there. They could look around and they could interact with different content, interact with their content in ways that wasn't otherwise possible without the virtual experience. Physical activity. This one actually ended up being one that we hadn't originally thought of. It gave students who otherwise wouldn't be interested in physical activity a reason to move. One of the games that became really popular on the Quest was called Beat Saber. And at first it was kind of like it was a novel thing, but then it got to be where all kinds of students were interested in it. So we started to think about could we incorporate this into like a physical education class? Could they go down there and get students moving, students that otherwise wouldn't be interested in moving, get them up, get them playing. The quote unquote gaming nerds that aren't interested in going out and playing dodgeball or playing basketball, but they'll stand there with lightsabers and beat and chop blocks apart. I mean, it opened up a whole other avenue. Unfortunately, we weren't able to actually implement this one. It was more in the development phase before school was closed. Um, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to implement that activity. And then finally, like I said, planning for the future. They were able to travel down to the KVEC VR lab, work with their experts to try to envision ways in which that they can create their own content in the future to make these virtual reality experiences even more tailored to the needs of the teachers. They weren't just creating they weren't just collecting stuff that was already there. They want to be able to make their own to make it exactly what those teachers are looking for. Once again, they didn't get a chance to start that due to early school closures. So my key takeaways: virtual reality allowed students to see things and places in a way that otherwise wasn't possible. They literally walked through the Great Pyramid. That's just not relevant. That's just not possible without VR. Students that weren't interested in physical activity were more willing to participate when given the virtual stimuli. So, like I said, a kid who was not interested in playing dodgeball was interested in playing a game Beat Saber. And if you've never played Beat Saber, it's very intense. Though these kids will turn that up to expert. I put it on one time. I missed just about every single block. Like, it's really, they would be dripping to sweat after the activity, after the virtual experience, so you could tell it was really engaged in it. And then students were excited to learn when virtual reality was used and solicited future use. So after virtual reality experiences, these students would go to their teachers and ask, well, when are those kids coming back? When are the VR kids coming back? We really want to do that again. So they were way more engaged that way. So thank you again. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. There's my email again. And thank you for listening to my presentation. Have a great day.